I'm going to read a poem called In Passing. As a matter of fact, I wrote another poem called In Passing, which I forgot about when I wrote this one. I think it should be called On Passing, because it's on passing on, if you know what I mean. So it's really about the death of passion and how short-lived, especially sexual passion, you know. And it was written, well, partly for Eugene Dubnov, with whom I'd been writing translations of his Russian poems for some time. And many of his poems are about his old passions, all of which, of course, disappeared long ago in the 70s and 80s. But then someone died who I cared a great deal about. And I still cared a great deal about him. But I couldn't summon up any of the feelings I'd had about him when we were lovers, as it were. And it was so impossibly gone. And I had a very nice impression of him as a human being and all the rest of it. But that passion had just gone. And in the long run, it occurred to me that really what passion is all about is yourself. And the other person is simply a target or focus, you know. And this is why marriages that are based on sexual passion only usually come to pieces. Anyway, I've had all sorts of relationships come to pieces, and I think back on them, they mean, you know, so little to me, except that I remember them as times when I was someone else. So in a way, one is a series of selves. So I'll read this in passion. In passing. In passion, on passing, anything you like. Dead passion, like pain, is only a name. Word never to be made, flesh again. Never again desires uncontrollable purge of the censoring brain. Nothing left but language. Like the four-leaf clover shut 50 years in a dusty book on a shelf. Open the book. Such a dry clover. Smiles, tears. Not for her, not for him. Only for that soft, brushing, hovering phantom, your dead self. Now, in a sense, your dead self haunts you like a ghost. There is a sort of ghostly self that is still there, but it isn't really there. So it is like a spirit, in a sense, that is gone. Now, what I'd like to say about this poem is that I had tried many times to write a long poem to this person, but it failed so often. It was so bad as I wrote it that I gave it up. And that was about, 15, 20 years ago. And this came suddenly, and I suddenly realized, well, I've done it, but I tried so hard to write a long poem. But it came out, this is a very short one. I think that it got me thinking about the way you write short poems and the way you write long poems are so very different. Because long poems are really another, what you would say, another species of the same genus, or same family. Literature is a family and a genus is poetry. And long poems are one species and short poems are another. So, and when this came as a short poem, it focused on the sound, on the rhymes, also on the rhythms, but in a short poem, you tend to want more relationships between the words. Long poems, you know, I think the iambic, pentameter, free verse, all these long poems, you use a much freer sense of the language when you're writing them. And I think historically, long poems came as narratives. They began long poems. Songs came as short poems. So the difference between a narrative or description or a scientific formula, if you like, and a short song. But this in passing isn't really a song. It's a thought. And notice that it really does rhyme all the way through. I mean, pain, name, again, brain to begin with, and then purge and language. Like the four-leaf clover, shut 50 years in a dusty book on a shelf. Years rhymes with tears, then not for her, not for him, only for that soft brushing, hovering phantom, him, phantom, and then dead self rhymes with shelf. So the whole thing is very tight. And oddly enough, when I was writing it, I was faintly aware of this, but only when I finished it did I realize it is really terribly close, terribly neat. And I think that in a short poem is satisfactory. That's successful in a short poem. You need that in a short poem. Otherwise, I don't really have much more to say about it. I had originally written a very long poem about a period in my own life, but it got so long, and it's got even longer, that it's now about 7 pages. So I didn't think it was the one for Plowshares. And I sent it to Neil, but I think he was better off with this one. Room for somebody else.